Welcome back. If you've been following along with the series, playlist in the cards now, we just defeated Diablos in the key quest, Horned Wyvern Hunt. Today we'll be hunting an Agnaktor in the key quest, Leviathan in the Fire. Agnaktor is a Leviathan monster, just like the Royal Ludroth and Nibblesnarf, though this one prefers volcanic areas. Where Royal Ludroth and Nibblesnarf can swim in water and sand respectively, Agnaktor can swim through rock with its tough beak and powerful muscles. It also has a great control over heat-based attacks, specifically a heat beam, similar to an attack Gravios might use. On top of that, Agnaktor also has magma armor, which will cool and harden when he's out of the ground or lava, causing most of his body to be so hard your weapons will bounce right off. To succeed in a hunt against Agnaktor, you'll need to be patient and have a keen eye for openings, otherwise this can be a very frustrating time. Let's go over Agnaktor's attacks, then I'll show you an example hunt using the longsword. As using Blademaster weapons against Agnaktor can be annoying, there will also be an example hunt with the bow in a separate video, so keep an eye out for that. As, apart from cutting off his tail, that's how I would recommend you farm Agnaktor materials. If you enjoy my content, I'd appreciate it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, and consider joining the YouTube membership. The more support I get, the more capable I'll be to make these kinds of videos. While I'm at it, I'd be very thankful if you could check out my other channels. There are links in the description. You may find something there you'll like.
のう、そうなるもの。
Head to Area 7. If this is your first time hunting Agnaktor, a cutscene will play, and he will start with hardened armor. Like I said in the intro, fighting Agnaktor with a Blademaster weapon is annoying. I highly recommend you use bow instead. There's just a lot that makes this fight obnoxious, whether it's his fast attacks, lighting you on fire, or regularly wasting your time by going underground or having hardened armor. This hunt isn't perfect, but that's probably for the best. If it went well, you may get the wrong impression. What I'm trying to say is, if you struggle with this hunt, don't feel bad, because I do too, and it's annoying. Bringing traps and sonic bombs makes this fight much more manageable. Anyways, our main target should be his back legs, or any other part when there's a safe opening. Emphasis on safe there because many times it's just not a good idea to approach or attack him. The volcano has some of the most annoying small monsters. Uraktor and Renoplos will annoy you, and you should take them out when it's safe to do so. I'm focusing on the legs in particular because breaking the armor or staggering them will cause him to fall over, giving me a pretty big opening to get my spirit combo off. And that's really annoying. It's almost like fighting this guy with a melee weapon is a bad idea. So much of this fight hinges entirely on RNG. Does he do an annoying attack? Does he not reheat his armor? Does he stay in the lava or do digging moves constantly? You can have a completely fun hunt against Agnaktor because you get lucky with RNG, then do one right after and have the worst time of your life. Or you use bow and skip this struggle entirely. Nobody ever said this monster was well balanced. Still, using a melee weapon is possible, and I do hope this helps you, but seriously, please use a bow instead unless you need to cut his tail off. I'm desperate to try to get a gauge level up for my sword. Remember to stay on his right side as much as you can. Agnaktor spawns in Area 7, but he'll go to Area 8 sometimes too. When he's hungry, he'll go to Area 5. So when he leaves 7, it's usually to 8 or 5. When he's weak and limping, he'll go to Area 10. He eats this Renoplast over here. If you get here at the same time as him, do yourself a favor and kill the other Renoplast while it's easy to. I have a feeling that maybe he'll sometimes go the opposite direction you go at the start of his landslide, but it's hard to tell. You know, my first hunt against Agnaktor when practicing for this video, he kept doing the 360 beam over and over, and it gave me tons of free damage. It's been downhill ever since. That's what I mean by this fight is too reliant on RNG. Looking at that frame by frame, that did actually hit me, but I still disagree. Yeah, you know it's bad when I start dodge rolling through attacks because I want to get this over with. Sorry, I don't expect you to roll through attacks, but if you're really struggling, I'm begging you to just use a bow instead. It's not like using a bow is boring or lame anyways, it's actually a lot of fun. Or at least a lot more fun. I feel like monsters like this, with attacks that can come out at any time that are super hard to avoid, like, you have to pray if you expect to get a slower combo off. It's like the only option to use is something super low commitment, because otherwise he could just do his tail swipe or something. I'm a firm believer that if an enemy spams one attack and it makes the fight way worse, then that move needs to be reworked or removed. I realize it's not quite as simple as that, but I think at a certain point we have to ask ourselves why it isn't. And that is such bullshit. You know something funny? I realized recently that they fixed this in Rise. I'm not sure if they did it in World, but if a monster reaches its stagger limit when it can't be staggered, it gets stuck at 1 HP until it can be staggered. I think it also works for things like exhaustion procs and such, I'm not sure. Monsters will also animation cancel to get staggered if they're already being staggered. It's just fair. If there's an effect on the monster from my actions, I should never be robbed of that effect, and in the older games this happens constantly. It doesn't even stop people from headlocking monsters if they really want to, it just makes it harder while also making it unfair for every other player. There's a lot to criticize the older games for, and we should. We should be fair in our judgment of games old and new. That being said, it's also entirely fine to still like these games despite their flaws. That's how loving something works. You acknowledge the imperfections and you love it still. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. Rest in piss. To make either of Agnaktor's armor sets, this is what you'll need. When carving Agnaktor's body, you can get Agnaktor's shell, Agnaktor hide, Scalding Pleura, Agnaktor claw, Agnaktor scale, and Firestone. When capturing Agnaktor, you can get Agnaktor hide, Agnaktor fin, 2 Agnaktor scales, Agnaktor claw, Firestone, or Scalding Pleura. When breaking Agnaktor's beak, you can get Agnaktor beak, Agnaktor shell, or lava nuggets. When breaking Agnaktor's chest, you can get Scalding Pleura, Agnaktor hide, Agnaktor scale, or Firestone. When breaking Agnaktor's dorsal fin, you can get Agnaktor fin, Agnaktor hide, or Agnaktor scale. When breaking Agnaktor's claws, you can get Agnaktor scale, Agnaktor claw, 2 Agnaktor claws, or Firestone. When carving Agnaktor's tail, you can get Agnaktor tail, Agnaktor fin, or Firestone. And finally, when picking up a shiny, you can get Quivering Tears, Agnaktor scale, or Firestone. The Agnaktor materials come from Agnaktor, of course, and Great Roggy parts come from Great Roggy. Uroktor scales and Monster Bone M's come from carving the smaller Uroktor in Volcano. Monster Bone M's can also be obtained from carving Renaplos. Dragonite ore and Firestones can be mined in the Volcano. Firestone can also be a reward for breaking various Agnaktor parts. Lava Nuggets can be obtained as a quest reward from Uragon and Agnaktor, as well as breaking Agnaktor's beak, though it's quite rare. Mining Uragon's back is a good way of getting them, as it's a 43% chance, and the same with breaking Uragon's tail and capturing him. It may be tricky to get enough of these. By default, the Blademaster Armor gives us these skills: Critical Eye +1, Guard +1, Razor Sharp, and the negative skill Worry Wart. Critical Eye plus 1 will increase our affinity by 10%. Affinity is just what Monster Hunter calls a critical strike chance. When you land a critical hit, your attack effect will flash red. Alternatively, if you ever have negative affinity, like some weapons have by default, a negative crit will flash purple. Positive crits will deal 25% more damage, while negative ones will deal 25% less. You can somewhat get a workable average of the effect of any given percentage of affinity by using this simple equation, then adding or subtracting 1 depending on if it's a positive or negative crit. Multiplying your attack value by this number will give you something of an average of the effect on your attack value. Keep in mind that Critical Eye is actually worse, on average, than normal attack boosting skills until you get a high enough base damage, since it's a multiplier. Mathematically speaking, if I understand correctly, Critical Eye plus 1 is only better than Attack up Small if your attack is 440 or higher. The more Critical Eye you have compared to the same level of Attack Up, the better this gets, with Critical Eye plus 2 being better than Attack Up Medium at attack values of 320 or higher, and Critical Eye plus 3 being better than Attack Up Large at attack values of 280 or higher. Now, that's just the armor skill on paper. Things can be different in practice. You should only really consider this level of skill for what it does, rather than it being very good at increasing your damage. What I mean by this is, any critical chance means that some of your attacks will be 25% stronger. You can do all the math you want, but if one of your hits is 25% stronger at just the right time, then that is a real impact. You can't plan for it, and it's not consistent, but if that's enough to convince you, then don't let me stop you. However, the opposite is also true. Any negative chance to crit means that some of your attacks will deal 25% less damage, and for some weapons this can really sting, but you should typically treat negative affinity the same way as positive, as an average. It's what makes the Tigress weapon so good despite having a negative affinity. However, adding affinity can bring some weapons out of negative affinity entirely. Using the Tigress weapons as an example, if you use Critical Eye plus 2, you can negate the negative affinity, leaving there no chance for a weaker hit, and even giving you a very small chance for a stronger hit. At a certain point, it definitely is personal preference. If you like seeing red flashes when you attack, then use Critical Eye. If you want a more consistent and practical attack increase, then use Attack Up. But that's still not the full picture, as you don't just get these skills on their own. You also get other skills from your armor and even your talismans, so you should use this information to inform your decision, not to force it any one way or another. There's also a consideration to be made for how fast your weapon is. Faster weapons will have more rolls on whether or not you crit, whereas slower ones will have less. That being said, faster weapons will also feel the effect of a crit more on an average, over time, whereas a slower weapon will hit harder and will feel a positive or negative crit much more. So if you use a slower weapon, you may want to weigh critical damage more than a faster weapon in my opinion. Also, keep in mind that this doesn't really change with affinity on your weapon. Though, technically, a negative affinity on your weapon will make Critical Eye start being better than attack boosting sooner, but we're talking about numbers that are well into high rank territory, if even that. A natural positive affinity just widens the gap further, since adding a base value into something being multiplied will usually benefit you more than adding more multiplier. As an example, 1 times 2 is 2. Adding to the multiplier gives us 1 times 3, which is 3, but adding to the base value instead gives us 2 times 2, which is 4. Thanks for coming to my elementary math lesson. I hope you learned something, because I could be entirely wrong. I'm not a math guy, believe it or not. Let's move on. Guard is a skill for lances and gun lances primarily. We've seen this skill before in the Agnaktor armor set. It will reduce the impact of attacks and the stamina cost when blocking, and is extremely useful and in some cases important. If you play lance or gun lance, you should be trying to get this skill similar to how hunting horn users want horn maestro, or bow and greatsword users want focus, for example. Any weapon that can block can also see some benefit from this, such as sword and shield and greatsword, but it really is going to mainly be a lance and gun lance skill. Razor Sharp is a very good general use skill for any Blademaster weapon. We've seen it before in the Agnaktor armor set. This skill is extremely good because it helps manage the upkeep that all melee weapons have to deal with. Having to sharpen less means you will have more uptime and less downtime. Sharpening also leaves you vulnerable if you can't leave the area for one reason or another, so having to do it less can also be safer in a way. Warrior Wart is a negative skill from the potential armor skill, the positive of which is Adrenaline plus 1 and Adrenaline plus 2. All of these skills will apply some sort of effect when your health reaches 40% or lower. The positive skills will buff your attack and defense, while the negative skills will decrease your attack and defense. While this sounds really bad, and it definitely isn't good, you never want to stay under 40% health for very long anyways. So as long as you stay above that threshold, you can avoid this effect entirely, or you can remove it with a decoration. Speaking of which, our armor has 6 open decoration slots, with 2 of our pieces being 2 slots. This means if we go all in on Critical Eye, for reasons I've previously stated, we can get, with just the armor, 19 in the Expert skill. Add in a weapon or charm with an open slot, and you can get Critical Eye plus 3 with Razor Sharp, which is honestly kind of an insane combination. If you can get 1 extra slot from your charm or weapon, you can also remove Warrior Wart. So if you don't need or want the guard skill at all, this is what I would recommend. 2 Expert Jewel 2s, which will take a total of 2 Sunspire Jewels, 2 Nagakuga Razors, and 4 Great Baggy Claws, and 3 Expert Jewel 1s, which will take a total of 3 Aqua Glow Jewels, 6 Sharpened Fangs from Deluxe, and 3 Iron Ore. If you have a decent charm that adds any amount of points to the Expert skill, this armor set just gets better and easier to use, so keep a lookout for that. You only need 1 extra point in Expert, or 2 will free up a slot to remove Warrior Wart. with a potential jewel 1, which will require 1 Sunspire jewel and 2 Duram Moss plates. With just 1 slot from a charm, you can get these skills: Critical Eye +3, Guard +1, Razor Sharp, and the native skill Worrywart. If you will be using the Guard skill, however, things change a little bit. You can get Guard +2 with 3 jewels. 1 Iron Wall Jewel 2, which requires 1 Sunspire jewel, 1 Agnaktor Beak, and 3 Agnaktor Shells, and 2 Iron Wall Jewel 1s, which will require 2 Sunspire jewels and 4 Barroth Shells. This leaves us with 2 open slots, which you can really only use for the Expert skill at this point, but you'll need more slots in your weapon and or charm, and ideally more points from your charm as well. If you can get enough, you can even slot in a potential jewel 1 as before to get rid of the Worrywart skill. Though it is arguably an avoidable negative skill, it's still best to have it removed if you can. With just 1 slot from a charm, you can get these skills: Critical Eye +2, Guard +2, Razor Sharp, and the negative skill Worrywart. Hopefully by giving you an idea of what talismans you could use with this set will give you a goal to aim for when charm farming, rather than just collecting a bunch and not having any clue as to how to use them, which is basically what I normally do. By default, the Gunner Armor gives us these skills: Steadiness +1, use level 1 Pierce Shot, Normal/Rapid Up, and the native skill Worrywart. Worrywart was already explained in the Blademaster section, so please refer to that for more information, but the rest of the skills are all unique to gunners. Steadiness will decrease the deviation that a bowgun has, if it has any. This has no effect on bows, as deviation isn't a stat that bow has to worry about. Deviation will cause your bullets to trail off in one direction or another, sometimes at random, once it's traveled a certain distance, so the skill reducing or even removing that effect can be pretty useful. Use level 1 Pierce Shot. At 10 skill points, this skill allows any bowgun to use the level 1 Pierce Shot. This armor leaves us with 11, so if we had 4 more skill points, it would activate the next level, which would allow any bowgun to use any level of Pierce Shot. Though, as I've been told, Pierce Shots aren't as good in this game as they are in others, so you may want to take that into consideration. Normal/Rapid Up. This skill will increase the damage dealt by normal shots and rapid shots from bowguns and bows respectively by 10%. If your strategy relies on using a lot of normal shots or rapid shots, this is a very, very good skill. It scales with your attack power, so the stronger your bowgun or bow gets, the more effective this skill becomes. The Gunner Armor has the same decoration slots as the Blademaster one, 2 1 slots and 2 2 slots, giving us 6 slots in total to work with. The skills you can use decorations for will really depend on what you need though. If you're not going to use Pierce Shots anyways, there's no point in unlocking them for all bowguns. And if your bowgun of choice doesn't have any deviation, then Steadiness is a useless skill. Because of this, the general use setup I would recommend is just how it normally is. Using 5 Factory Jewel 1s, which will take 5 Aqua Gold Jewels and 5 small Golden Fish, which can be obtained from the farm's feline fishing and maybe the fishing pier, will activate the skill Combination Pro, which will maximize our crafting output when making bullets during a hunt. This is much more valuable than Combination Chance, since we can increase our chance by bringing along combination books. But in order to ensure the maximum amount of items crafted, we have to use Combination Pro. If you've been following along, this is the last key quest for the village. Beating all key quests unlocks the last book of combos, level 2 recovery shots, and mega pickaxes and bug nets from the store. You can also buy these things from the vendor in the Gathering Hub, as well as a book for Gen Moran, which will be our next and final urgent quest in the village. That's right, we're just about done here. One more quest, then we can move on to the guild hall and into the high rank quests and the rest of the game. It's no small thing you've done by progressing this far. You're doing great, and in an excellent position to take on the quests in the Gathering Hall. But keep in mind these are meant for multiple hunters, so they will be harder than the monster we've been fighting in the village quests. If you approach each hunt as you have been so far, I know you'll keep doing great, so keep it up. It's time to take on the Peak Mountain Dragon. Until next time.